The Boss Baby is a 2017 American animated spy comedy film produced by DreamWorks Animation and distributed by 20th Century Fox. The film was directed by Tom McGrath, a filmmaker well known within the DreamWorks family for his earlier work on Madagascar and Megamind, and it was written by Michael McCullers. The story is loosely inspired by the 2010 picture book of the same name, written and illustrated by Marla Frazee, though the film expands the simple children's book concept into a much larger espionage-driven adventure aimed at both children and adults. The Boss Baby premiered at the Miami International Film Festival in March 2017 before receiving its wide theatrical release later that same month in the United States. As the very first installment in what would go on to become the Boss Baby franchise, the film introduces audiences to a fantastical corporate universe hidden behind the ordinary life of a suburban American family, where babies are secretly employed executives working for a mysterious organization known as Baby Corporation. This blend of childlike imagination and corporate satire became the defining identity of the franchise, setting it apart from typical family animated films by injecting boardroom humor, spy thriller pacing, and workplace comedy into a story ultimately about sibling rivalry and family love. Plot details. The story is narrated from the perspective of an adult Tim Templeton, voiced by Tobey Maguire, who looks back on a pivotal chapter of his childhood. As a 7-year-old boy living happily with his loving parents, young Tim enjoys an idyllic life filled with imagination, adventure, and the undivided attention of his mother and father. His peaceful world is turned upside down when his parents bring home a new baby brother, a mysterious infant who arrives wearing a tiny business suit and carrying a briefcase. Tim is immediately suspicious of this strange new sibling, and his suspicions prove correct when he discovers that the baby can actually talk, walk, and behave like a fully grown corporate executive whenever the adults are not around. This baby, known simply as Boss Baby, reveals that he is in fact a top-level executive from Baby Corp, a secretive company responsible for overseeing the birth and management of every baby in the world, and he has been sent on a covert mission disguised as a member of the Templeton family. As the story unfolds, Boss Baby confides in Tim that Baby Corp is facing an existential crisis. Puppies have become dramatically more popular than babies in recent years, threatening to tip the delicate balance of parental love and adoration away from infants and toward household pets. The primary culprit behind this shift is Francis, the charismatic and calculating CEO of Puppy Company, voiced by Steve Buscemi, who has secretly been developing a new breed of puppy so irresistibly adorable that love for babies would become permanently obsolete. In order to save Baby Corp and prevent this catastrophe, Boss Baby has been assigned to infiltrate the Templeton household, since Tim's father works at Puppy Company and unknowingly holds information that could help uncover Francis's scheme. Initially, Tim and Boss Baby view each other as rivals competing for their parents' attention, and their early interactions are marked by mischief, sabotage, and comedic sibling conflict. However, as the two brothers are forced to work together to investigate Puppy Company and stop Francis's plan, they slowly begin to understand and appreciate one another. Their mission takes them through a series of increasingly wild and imaginative set pieces, blending elements of classic spy films with the exaggerated logic of a child's daydream. Along the way, Tim grapples with his fear of losing his parents' love to his baby brother, while Boss Baby begins to develop genuine affection for the family he was only supposed to be using as cover. The emotional core of the film gradually shifts from corporate espionage to a heartfelt exploration of sibling bonding, as both brothers come to realize that love within a family is not something that has to be divided, but something that can grow to include everyone. The climax of the film sees Tim and Boss Baby racing against time to stop Francis from unveiling his new line of hyper-adorable puppies at a major unveiling event, all while trying to make sure Tim's parents remain unaware of the secret battle taking place around them. The brothers must combine Tim's boundless imagination with Boss Baby's corporate cunning to outsmart Francis and save Baby Corp from collapse. In true family film fashion, The mission ultimately becomes less about corporate victory and more about proving that Boss Baby, despite his executive title and briefcase, genuinely belongs as part of the Templeton family. The film closes on a bittersweet yet heartwarming note, revealing that the entire adventure may have been colored by the fanciful memory and imagination of young Tim, while still affirming the very real and lasting bond that formed between the two brothers. Cast: Alec Baldwin lends his voice to the title character, Boss Baby, bringing his signature sharp, commanding vocal delivery to the role of a corporate infant with the personality of a seasoned business executive. Baldwin's casting was considered a masterstroke by many critics and audiences, as his distinct voice added an extra layer of comedic contrast between the character's tiny body and his authoritative demeanor. Miles Bakshi voices young Tim Templeton, the 7-year-old protagonist whose imaginative point of view drives the entire narrative. Bakshi, who comes from a family with deep roots in animation history as the grandson of legendary director Ralph Bakshi, was chosen after the filmmakers auditioned dozens of children and found that his natural, authentic voice best captured Tim's youthful wonder and vulnerability. Steve Buscemi voices Francis, the villainous CEO of Puppy Company, delivering a performance that balances slick charm with underlying menace. Buscemi replaced Kevin Spacey, who had originally been cast in the role before later casting changes were made. Lisa Kudrow and Jimmy Kimmel voiced him and Boss Baby's parents, Janice and Ted Templeton, portraying a warm and loving couple who remain blissfully unaware of the secret world operating right under their roof. Tobey Maguire provides the narration as the adult version of Tim, framing the entire story as a nostalgic recollection of his childhood. The voice cast also includes additional performers who help populate the world of Baby Corp and Puppy Company with a colorful array of supporting characters, each adding to the film's blend of workplace satire and childlike whimsy. Release date and production background. The Boss Baby was released theatrically in the United States on March 31, 2017, following its festival premiere earlier that month at the Miami International Film Festival. The film was produced by DreamWorks Animation and distributed by 20th Century Fox, marking one of the final DreamWorks productions to be handled by Fox before DreamWorks transitioned to Universal Pictures for distribution in later years. The production carried a budget of approximately $125 million, a substantial investment that reflected DreamWorks' confidence in the project's potential to appeal to a broad, multi-generational audience. Upon release, the film became a significant commercial success, ultimately grossing more than $500 million worldwide, a result that far exceeded initial expectations and cemented Boss Baby's status as one of the more profitable original animated properties of its era. The film's popularity was strong enough to launch an entire franchise, including a sequel titled The Boss Baby Family Business released in 2021. As well as multiple animated television series that expanded the world of Baby Corp for younger audiences. Explanation and cultural analysis. Beyond its surface-level comedy, The Boss Baby resonates with audiences because it taps into a deeply universal childhood experience, the arrival of a new sibling and the emotional upheaval that often accompanies it. By reimagining this common family experience through the exaggerated lens of corporate espionage, the film gives children a fantastical, empowering way to process feelings of jealousy, insecurity, and eventual acceptance. The choice to frame babies as covert agents working for a secretive corporation is a clever narrative device that allows the film to explore adult themes such as corporate rivalry, workplace politics, and even economic competition, all while remaining accessible and entertaining for young viewers. This dual-layered storytelling approach, combining childlike fantasy with knowing adult humor, has become something of a signature style for many successful DreamWorks productions, and Boss Baby executes this balance particularly well by grounding its wildest plot elements in a genuinely heartfelt exploration of sibling bonding. The film's visual style also plays an important role in reinforcing its themes. The character designs, particularly Boss Baby's tiny suit paired with his oversized head and expressive eyes, visually reinforced the collision between infantile innocence and adult authority that defines the entire premise. The animation team drew inspiration from classic espionage films and corporate imagery to build a distinct visual identity for Baby Corp, filled with sleek boardrooms, elevators, and executive briefings scaled down to nursery proportions. This attention to visual comedy, combined with a fast-paced plot structure reminiscent of spy thrillers, helped the film stand out within a crowded field of family animated releases in 2017. Critically, the film received a mixed reception, with many reviewers praising the strength of its voice cast, particularly Alec Baldwin's performance, along with its visual inventiveness and clever premise, while others felt that the plot occasionally leaned too heavily on juvenile humor at the expense of deeper storytelling. Despite this mixed critical response, audience reception was notably more enthusiastic, and the film went on to earn a Best Animated Feature nomination at the Academy Awards, along with nominations at the Annie Awards and Golden Globes, further validating its impact within the animation industry. Its commercial success ultimately proved that the concept resonated strongly with families, paving the way for continued expansion of the franchise across film and television. Ultimately, The Boss Baby stands as a strong example of how a simple, relatable family experience can be transformed into an imaginative and commercially successful piece of entertainment through creative world building and strong voice performances. Its lasting legacy within DreamWorks' catalog is a testament to the enduring appeal of stories that manage to speak to both children and adults simultaneously, using humor and fantasy to explore the timeless bond between siblings. The Boss Baby, 2017, Complete Story Retelling. Part 1, A World Made of Wonder. Long before he became the man narrating this story with the gentle amusement of hindsight, Tim Templeton was simply a boy of 7, living in a modest suburban house with a lawn that seemed impossibly green and a bedroom filled with more toys, blankets, and half-built cardboard forts than any single child could ever need. Tim was, in every sense that mattered to him, the center of his own universe. His parents, Ted and Janice Templeton, doted on him with the kind of complete, undivided attention that only an only child can fully appreciate. Ted worked as a marketing executive at a company called Puppy Company, a bright and cheerful corporation devoted entirely to the business of puppies, while Janice held a position at a company that made snow globes, a detail that always struck him as delightfully whimsical, as though his mother's job were itself a piece of magic. Every evening followed a comforting, almost ritualistic rhythm. Ted and Janice would return from work, and the three of them would eat dinner together, tell elaborate bedtime stories, sing silly songs, and tuck Tim into bed with a routine so lovingly precise that Tim could recite every step of it by heart. Tim was, by his own admission, an imaginative child, prone to inventing entire fantastical worlds out of thin air. He often narrated his own life as though it were an unfolding adventure, populated by pirates, robots, and secret agents, all drawn from the boundless well of a child's creativity. It was this very tendency toward imagination that would later shape the extraordinary tale he was about to live through, a tale so strange and eventful that even as an adult, he would never be entirely certain how much of it had truly happened and how much had been conjured by his own restless young mind. Tim's contentment, however, was about to be shattered. One ordinary evening, his parents sat him down with unusually serious expressions and told him that they had some exciting news. A new baby was coming to join the family. Tim, still too young to fully grasp what this meant for his day-to-day life, nodded along with polite curiosity, unaware that his entire world was about to be upended. Part 2. The arrival of a very unusual baby. The day finally arrived when Ted and Janice brought the new baby home, and Tim's first glimpse of his new brother left him utterly bewildered. The baby did not arrive the way Tim had imagined babies typically did. He was not wrapped in a soft blanket, gurgling and cooing in his mother's arms. Instead, He stepped out of a taxi wearing a full black business suit, complete with a tiny red tie and a briefcase clutched in his chubby hand. His head was disproportionately large, his eyebrows were thick and expressive, and his face carried an expression of stern, businesslike authority that seemed wildly out of place on an infant. Tim watched in stunned silence as his parents fawned over this strange new arrival, seemingly oblivious to how peculiar he appeared. To Ted and Janice, the baby behaved exactly as any newborn should, crying, babbling, and demanding attention in all the usual ways. But whenever the adults left the room, something remarkable happened. The baby's demeanor would shift entirely. He would stand upright, straighten his tiny suit jacket, and speak in a deep, gravelly, fully adult voice, barking commands and making sharp, cutting remarks with the confidence of a hardened corporate executive. Tim was horrified and fascinated in equal measure. He tried desperately to convince his parents that something was deeply wrong with this baby, that he was not behaving like any normal infant should, but every time he attempted to reveal the truth, the baby would cleverly disguise his behavior at the last possible second, leaving Tim looking foolish and overly dramatic in front of his bewildered parents. This pattern repeated itself again and again, with Tim growing increasingly desperate and frustrated as no one else seemed to notice the bizarre reality unfolding right in front of them. Eventually, alone in his room with the baby, Tim confronted him directly, refusing to back down despite the baby's attempts at intimidation. It was in this moment that the truth finally came spilling out. The baby, who introduced himself simply as Boss Baby, revealed that he was not, in fact, a normal infant at all. He was an executive from a mysterious and powerful organization known as Baby Corp, an enormous, highly secretive company responsible for overseeing the production, distribution, and management of every single baby born into the world. Boss Baby explained, with the clipped efficiency of a seasoned businessman delivering a quarterly report, that Baby Corp operated behind the scenes of ordinary human life, ensuring that babies received exactly the right amount of parental love and attention needed to keep families functioning happily. Tim, still reeling from this revelation, demanded to know why Boss Baby had been sent to his family specifically, and what possible reason a corporate baby executive could have for infiltrating his ordinary suburban household. Boss Baby's explanation set the entire adventure into motion. Part 3: The Secret War Between Babies and Puppies. According to Boss Baby, Baby Corp was facing an unprecedented crisis. For generations, babies had always been guaranteed the largest possible share of human love and affection, an arrangement so fundamental that it had never once been seriously challenged. But recently, something troubling had begun to happen. Across households everywhere, love and attention that once belonged exclusively to babies had started shifting toward an unexpected rival, puppies. Families were falling head over heels for adorable, playful puppies in numbers never before seen, and Baby Corp's internal metrics, tracked obsessively by its army of infant executives, showed a disturbing trend. If this shift continued unchecked, babies risked losing their privileged status as the primary recipients of human love forever. At the center of this looming catastrophe stood Puppy Company, a rival corporation entirely devoted to the business of puppies, led by its charismatic and endlessly charming CEO, Francis Francis. On the surface, Francis appeared to be nothing more than an eccentric, puppy-loving entrepreneur with a flair for theatrical presentations and a seemingly bottomless enthusiasm for his adorable canine products. But Boss Baby was convinced that Francis was secretly developing something far more dangerous, a new breed of puppy so overwhelmingly cute and irresistible that it would permanently and irreversibly tip the balance of love away from babies forever, rendering Baby Corp's entire mission obsolete. Boss Baby's assignment, handed down directly from the highest levels of Baby Corp leadership, was to infiltrate a family with a direct connection to Puppy Company and uncover Francis's secret plan before it could be unveiled to the world. Tim's father Ted, as a marketing executive at Puppy Company, made the Templeton household the perfect target. Boss Baby had been placed into the family disguised as a normal newborn, tasked with investigating Ted's workplace from the inside while maintaining the illusion of an ordinary infant whenever his parents were watching. Tim, understandably, struggled to process all of this. Part of him remained deeply suspicious of Boss Baby's motives, while another part of him, the imaginative, adventure-hungry part that had always longed for exactly this kind of secret mission, found himself reluctantly intrigued. Boss Baby, ever the pragmatist, made Tim an offer. If Tim helped him complete his mission and successfully thwarted Francis's plan, Baby Corp would ensure that Boss Baby left the family entirely once the assignment was finished, allowing Tim to reclaim his parents' undivided attention and return his life to normal. Reluctantly, and with more than a little skepticism, Tim agreed to help. Part 4. An Uneasy Alliance. What followed was a period of uneasy cooperation between the two brothers, each viewing the other with a mixture of suspicion, irritation, and grudging necessity. Boss Baby, accustomed to barking orders and receiving instant compliance from his team of infant collies back at Baby Corp headquarters, found Tim's childish unpredictability endlessly frustrating. Tim, in turn, resented having his home, his imagination, and his parents' affection hijacked by this bossy, briefcase-carrying interloper who treated their family life like nothing more than an inconvenient cover assignment. Their first major mission together involved sneaking into Ted's home office late at night to search for information about Puppy Company's upcoming product launch. Tim, drawing on his vivid imagination, envisioned the mission as an elaborate spy operation, complete with imaginary laser security systems and secret passageways, much to Boss Baby's visible annoyance. Despite their bickering, the two managed to locate a crucial piece of information, an invitation to an exclusive Puppy Company event where Francis was rumored to be unveiling something monumental. As the two brothers continued working together, small cracks began to appear in their adversarial relationship. Boss Baby, despite his hardened corporate exterior, occasionally let slip glimpses of genuine vulnerability, moments where his executive bravado faltered and something more childlike peeked through. Tim, despite his initial resentment, found himself growing increasingly fascinated by the secret world Boss Baby had revealed to him, a world of infant executives, corporate hierarchies, and covert operations that fed directly into his boundless imaginative appetite. One particularly memorable sequence saw the brothers infiltrating a daycare center that Boss Baby suspected was being used as a front for Puppy Company operations. Disguised in makeshift spy gear fashioned from household items and playground equipment, Tim and Boss Baby navigated the daycare's ball pits, jungle gyms, and nap time routines as though they were traversing a high-stakes enemy compound. The sequence blended the absurdity of a spy thriller with the innocent chaos of an actual children's daycare, creating a distinctly whimsical tone that captured the film's unique blend of adult humor and childlike wonder. Part 5. Growing Bonds and Deepening Rivalry. As the mission progressed, Tim's initial jealousy toward Boss Baby began to shift into something more complicated. He watched as his parents continued to shower attention on his baby brother, and old insecurities resurfaced, fears that he was being replaced, forgotten, pushed aside in favor of this strange new arrival. These feelings occasionally boiled over into moments of genuine conflict between the brothers, with Tim lashing out in frustration and Boss Baby responding with cold, businesslike detachment that only made Tim feel more isolated. Yet even amid this tension, small moments of connection continued to accumulate. There was a scene in which Boss Baby, exhausted from the pressures of his mission and momentarily letting his guard down, admitted to Tim that he too felt uncertain and overwhelmed, despite his confident executive persona. This rare admission of vulnerability struck a chord with Tim, who began to see his brother not merely as a corporate nuisance but as someone navigating his own set of anxieties and pressures, however unusual those pressures might be. Their next major move in the investigation led them directly to Puppy Company headquarters, where Ted worked. Sneaking into the building under the guise of a father-son visit, Tim and Boss Baby explored the sprawling corporate campus, marveling at its elaborate puppy-themed decor, playful architecture, and enthusiastic, puppy-obsessed employees. It was here that they first laid eyes on Francis in person, a tall, charismatic figure whose warm smile and effortless charm masked a shrewd and calculating businessman underneath. Francis, unaware of the brothers' true purpose, greeted Ted warmly, and even took a moment to interact playfully with Tim, further complicating the boy's feelings about the mission. If Francis truly was the villain Boss Baby claimed him to be, he certainly didn't act the part, appearing instead as a genuinely kind and enthusiastic puppy enthusiast. This moment planted a seed of doubt in Tim's mind, one that would grow more significant as the story progressed. Part 6. Uncovering the Secret Plan. Determined to find concrete evidence of Francis's scheme, Tim and Boss Baby devised an elaborate plan to infiltrate a restricted area of Puppy Company headquarters where secretive research and development activities were rumored to be taking place. This sequence marked one of the film's most visually inventive and imaginative set pieces, as the brothers navigated a labyrinth of corporate corridors, security checkpoints, and hidden laboratories, all filtered through Tim's exaggerated, adventure-hungry perspective. Deep within the restricted facility, the brothers finally uncovered the truth behind Francis's secret project. Puppy Company had been developing a revolutionary new breed of puppy, one genetically engineered and meticulously designed to be more irresistibly adorable than any puppy that had ever existed before. This new breed, once unveiled to the public, threatened to trigger an unstoppable wave of puppy adoption that would permanently and catastrophically shift the balance of human affection away from babies forever, exactly as Boss Baby had feared. Armed with this damning evidence, Tim and Boss Baby scrambled to escape the facility undetected, narrowly avoiding capture in a tense and comedic chase sequence that highlighted both Boss Baby's resourcefulness and Tim's boundless creativity under pressure. Having confirmed the existence of Francis's plan, the brothers now faced an even greater challenge, figuring out how to stop the scheme before it could be unveiled at Puppy Company's upcoming major public event. Part 7. A deepening crisis at home. While the espionage plot intensified, the emotional core of the story continued to develop in parallel. Tim's insecurities about losing his parents' love reached a breaking point during a family outing to a local carnival, a sequence bursting with the kind of exaggerated, colorful imagery that reflected Tim's vivid inner world. Amid the chaos of games, rides, and cotton candy, Tim watched with mounting anguish as his parents devoted seemingly endless attention to Boss Baby, leaving him feeling more invisible than ever. In a moment of raw emotional honesty, Tim confronted Boss Baby about his fear that once the mission was complete, nothing would actually change, that his parents' affection would remain permanently divided, and that he would never again enjoy the singular, uncomplicated love he once had as an only child. Boss Baby, caught off guard by the depth of Tim's vulnerability, struggled to respond, his corporate training offering him no clear script for handling something as messy and human as a little brother's heartbreak. This moment marked a significant turning point in their relationship. For the first time, Boss Baby began to see Tim not merely as a useful pawn in his corporate mission, but as a genuine little brother whose feelings mattered. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something resembling real brotherly affection began to take root between them, even as external pressures continued to mount. Part 8. Betrayal and Setback. Just as the brothers seemed to be finding their footing, both in their investigation and in their relationship, a devastating setback struck. Francis, having grown suspicious of Ted's family and their unusual behavior, orchestrated a clever scheme to separate Tim and Boss Baby from their parents entirely. Through a combination of manipulation and corporate maneuvering, Francis managed to convince Ted and Janice to attend an important work event without their children, leaving Tim and Boss Baby temporarily stranded and cut off from their usual support system. Worse still, Francis revealed that he had uncovered Boss Baby's true identity as a Baby Corp operative, having grown suspicious of the strange, business-suited infant lurking around his company's most sensitive areas. In a tense and dramatic confrontation, Francis captured Boss Baby, intending to use him as leverage to ensure Baby Corp would not interfere with his puppy unveiling event. Tim, left alone and facing overwhelming odds, found himself forced to confront his greatest fears without his brother by his side. This section of the story served as a crucial test of Tim's growth throughout the narrative, pushing him to draw upon his own inner resourcefulness and courage rather than relying solely on Boss Baby's corporate expertise. Determined not to abandon his brother despite everything that had happened between them, Tim resolved to find a way to rescue Boss Baby and stop Francis's plan, even if it meant facing the crisis entirely on his own. Part 9. Reinforcements arrive. Fortunately, Tim was not entirely without allies. Boss Baby's colleagues from Baby Corp, a rotating cast of infant agents each with their own distinct personalities and specialized skills, arrived to assist in the rescue mission, having been alerted to Boss Baby's capture. This introduced a delightful new dynamic to the story, as Tim found himself working alongside a team of highly capable, if occasionally chaotic, baby operatives, each bringing their own unique blend of professional competence and adorable infant unpredictability to the mission. Together, this unlikely team infiltrated Puppy Company's headquarters once again, this time on a full-scale rescue operation to free Boss Baby before Francis could use him against Baby Corporation. The sequence unfolded with all the tension and spectacle of a classic action set piece, filtered once again through the exaggerated, larger-than-life lens of Tim's imagination, complete with narrow escapes, clever improvised gadgets, and moments of genuine heroism from characters who, in any other context, would simply be ordinary infants. The rescue mission succeeded, but not without cost. Francis, having anticipated an attempted rescue, activated an even more aggressive contingency plan, moving up the timeline for his puppy unveiling event and setting the stage for a final, high-stakes confrontation between Baby Corp and Puppy Company. Part 10. The Final Confrontation. With time running dangerously short, Tim and Boss Baby, now fully reconciled and united by genuine brotherly loyalty rather than mere corporate necessity, raced to stop Francis before his unveiling event could take place. The climax of the story unfolded at a massive public gathering where Francis prepared to reveal his new breed of irresistibly adorable puppies to an eager crowd of onlookers, an event that, if successful, would permanently and irrevocably shift the balance of love away from babies forever. The final confrontation combined every element that had defined the story up to this point: corporate espionage, elaborate imaginative spectacle, and above all, the deepening bond between two brothers who had started the story as reluctant, resentful rivals and had grown into genuine allies willing to risk everything for one another. Tim, drawing on the very imagination that had once seemed like nothing more than a childish quirk, devised a clever plan to disrupt Francis's unveiling at the crucial moment, while Boss Baby coordinated with his Baby Corp colleagues to neutralize the threat on a larger organizational scale. In a chaotic, thrilling sequence filled with narrow misses and clever improvisation, Tim and Boss Baby succeeded in exposing Francis's scheme to the gathered crowd, revealing the true nature of his manipulative plan before it could be fully unveiled. Francis's carefully constructed plot collapsed in spectacular fashion, and with it, the immediate threat to Baby Corp's mission was finally neutralized. Part 11. Resolution and Reflection. In the aftermath of the confrontation, with Ted and Janice remaining blissfully unaware of the extraordinary secret battle that had just unfolded around them, life within the Templeton household began to settle into a new, more harmonious rhythm. Boss Baby, his mission now complete, faced the choice he had promised him at the very beginning, the option to return permanently to Baby Corp headquarters and leave the family for good. But something had fundamentally changed. The bond that had formed between the two brothers over the course of their shared adventure had grown into something far more meaningful than either of them had anticipated at the outset. In a touching and emotionally resonant conclusion, Boss Baby made the decision to remain with the Templeton family, choosing genuine brotherhood over corporate obligation. Tim, who had once desperately wished for his baby brother to disappear entirely, now found himself equally desperate for Boss Baby to stay, having come to cherish the unlikely partnership and affection that had blossomed between them. The story closes with a warm, reflective coda, returning to the framing device of adult Tim recounting these fantastical childhood memories. As the narration draws to a close, a gentle ambiguity lingers over the entire tale, inviting audiences to wonder how much of this extraordinary adventure was rooted in literal reality, and how much was shaped by the vivid, boundless imagination of a young boy processing the arrival of a new sibling. This ambiguity, rather than undermining the story, ultimately reinforces its emotional truth, the universal experience of learning to share love, space, and family with someone new, transformed into an unforgettable and deeply imaginative cinematic journey. Part 12. Themes woven through the story. Throughout this entire narrative, several key themes remain consistently present, weaving together the film's blend of corporate satire, spy adventure, and heartfelt family drama. At its core, the story functions as an extended metaphor for the universal childhood experience of welcoming a new sibling into the family, transforming feelings of jealousy, displacement, and insecurity into an epic, imaginative adventure that ultimately resolves in acceptance and love. By framing this deeply personal emotional journey through the exaggerated lens of corporate espionage and spy thriller conventions, the story manages to entertain on multiple levels simultaneously, offering younger viewers a wildly entertaining adventure while providing older audiences with clever, knowing humor about corporate culture and workplace dynamics. The relationship between Tim and Boss Baby serves as the emotional backbone of the entire narrative, charting a believable and satisfying arc from initial rivalry and resentment through gradual understanding to genuine brotherly love. This evolution mirrors countless real-world sibling relationships, where initial jealousy and competition for parental attention eventually give way to deep, lasting bonds built through shared experience. Similarly, the conflict between Baby Corp and Puppy Company serves as a playful commentary on corporate competition, marketing, and the sometimes absurd lengths companies will go to in order to maintain market dominance, all filtered through the innocent, exaggerated perspective of a child's imagination. Francis, despite his villainous role within the story, is portrayed with enough charm and complexity to avoid feeling like a one-dimensional antagonist, reflecting the film's broader tendency to blend comedic exaggeration with genuine emotional nuance. Part 13. A story rooted in imagination. Ultimately, The Boss Baby stands as a story deeply rooted in the power and importance of childhood imagination. Every fantastical element of the narrative, from talking corporate infants to secretive spy missions, can be understood as an extension of young Tim's vivid inner world, his way of processing a significant and emotionally challenging life change through the lens of adventure, heroism, and ultimately, love. The film's willingness to embrace this ambiguity, never fully confirming or denying the literal reality of its events, allows the story to function simultaneously as a wild, entertaining fantasy and a genuinely touching exploration of family dynamics. By the story's conclusion, audiences are left with a warm, satisfying resolution that honors both the film's comedic, high-energy spy adventure elements and its deeper emotional core. Tim's journey from jealous only child to loving older brother mirrors countless real family experiences, elevated and transformed through the boundless creativity of childhood imagination into an unforgettable cinematic adventure that continues to resonate with audiences of all ages. The Boss Baby, 2017, Complete Life Histories of the Cast. Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin, who lends his unmistakable voice to the title character of the Boss Baby, was born Alexander Ray Baldwin III on April 3, 1958, in Massapequa, on Long Island, New York. He grew up as the eldest of 6 children in a devoutly Catholic household, the son of a high school teacher and football coach and a homemaker mother. From a young age, Baldwin was surrounded by a family that would eventually produce 3 more actors, as his younger brothers Daniel, William, and Stephen all followed him into the entertainment industry, making the Baldwins one of Hollywood's most recognizable acting families. Growing up in Massapequa, Alec attended Alfred G. Burner High School, where he took part in football and began nurturing an early interest in performance, though acting was not initially his intended path in life. After graduating high school, Baldwin enrolled at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where he studied political science with the intention of eventually attending law school. However, his childhood fascination with performing began to resurface during his college years, pulling him away from a legal career and toward the stage. He made the pivotal decision to leave political science behind and moved to Manhattan, enrolling at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, where he studied drama and eventually became associated with the prestigious Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute and the Actors Studio. To support himself during these formative years, Baldwin took on ordinary jobs, including a stint as a busboy at the famous New York nightclub Studio 54, immersing himself in the city's vibrant cultural scene while honing his craft. Baldwin's professional acting career began on television, where he landed a recurring role on the daytime soap opera The Doctors in the early 1980s, a part he held for a couple of years before transitioning to primetime television. He went on to appear in the nighttime soap opera Knots Landing in the mid-1980s, gaining wider recognition as a rising television talent. During this period, he also made his Broadway debut in a production of Joe Orton's dark comedy Loot, a performance that earned him early theatrical acclaim and a Theatre World Award. His film career began to take shape soon after, with early roles in movies such as Forever, Lulu, Beetlejuice, Working Girl, Married to the Mob, and Talk Radio, all released in the late 1980s and establishing him as a versatile leading man capable of moving between comedy and drama. The 1990s cemented Baldwin's status as a major Hollywood star. He took on the role of Jack Ryan in the espionage thriller The Hunt for Red October, based on the works of novelist Tom Clancy, and delivered a widely praised performance in the film adaptation of David Mamet's Glengarry Glen Ross. Throughout the decade and into the 2000s, Baldwin continued building an eclectic filmography that included State and Main, Pearl Harbor, and The Cooler, the latter earning him nominations for an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and a Screen Actors Guild Award for his supporting performance. He also worked with acclaimed director Martin Scorsese on The Aviator and The Departed, further establishing his reputation as one of the finest character actors of his generation. Perhaps the role that introduced Baldwin to an entirely new generation of audiences was his portrayal of the arrogant yet charismatic television executive Jack Donaghy on the hit NBC sitcom 30 Rock, created by Tina Fey. His performance on the show, which ran from 2006 to 2013, earned him multiple Emmy Awards and transformed him into one of television's most beloved comedic actors. Around this same period, Baldwin also became known for his frequent hosting appearances on Saturday Night Live, where his sharp comedic timing and impressions, including a widely discussed portrayal of a prominent political figure, earned him additional industry recognition. Baldwin's voice work has also become a significant part of his career, and his casting as the title character in The Boss Baby stands as one of the most celebrated examples of this. His deep, commanding, and instantly recognizable voice added a layer of comedic authenticity to the character of a briefcase-carrying infant executive, and critics widely praised the casting choice as one of the film's strongest creative decisions. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Baldwin has led a colorful personal life, having been married to actress Kim Basinger before later marrying Ilaria Baldwin, with whom he has built a large family. Despite facing public and personal challenges over the years, Baldwin has remained one of the most enduring and respected names in American entertainment, continuing to work steadily across film, television, and voice acting well into recent years. Miles Bakshi. Miles Christopher Bakshi, who voices young Tim Templeton in The Boss Baby, was born on December 19, 2002, in Los Angeles, California, into a family with an extraordinarily deep connection to the world of animation. His mother, Gina Shea, has worked for years as a producer at DreamWorks Animation, while his father, Preston Bakshi, is a writer. Most notably, Miles is the grandson of Ralph Bakshi, the legendary and boundary-pushing animation director known for groundbreaking and often controversial works such as Fritz the Cat and an early animated adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. Growing up surrounded by animators, storyboards, and studio visits from a very young age, Miles was immersed in the craft of animated storytelling long before he ever stepped in front of a microphone professionally. Given his mother's position within DreamWorks Animation, Miles was often present around the studio as a child, and this closeness to the creative process eventually led to his earliest voice acting opportunities. His first credited roles came in small parts within the Shrek franchise, voicing an ogre baby character in the holiday special Shrek the Halls and later contributing to Shrek Forever After, where he voiced some of the young ogre children born to Shrek and Fiona. These early roles, while modest, gave the young Bakshi valuable experience working within a major animation studio environment. His breakthrough opportunity came when director Tom McGrath was searching for the right voice to bring Tim Templeton to life in The Boss Baby. Because Miles was already a familiar presence around the DreamWorks offices, McGrath initially asked him to provide only a temporary reference voice for the character, simply to help the production team judge whether the concept for Tim was working during development. The filmmakers auditioned dozens of children for the role, listening to as many as 30 or 40 young voice actors, yet they ultimately found that none possessed the same natural, unforced authenticity that Miles brought to the part. McGrath later explained that many talented child performers tend to sound overly polished or articulate for their age, whereas Miles delivered a genuinely natural and endearing quality, including a slight, charming lisp that made the character feel completely real. Remarkably, Miles began recording his lines for the film when he was around 10 years old, and because production stretched on for several years, his voice naturally began to change as he grew older, requiring him to adjust his performance as recording continued. By the time the film was finally released in 2017, Miles was 14 years old, having essentially grown up alongside the character he was voicing. Beyond his work in The Boss Baby, Miles Bakshi has continued to build a career within the entertainment industry, gradually shifting his focus from voice acting toward filmmaking and directing as he has grown into adulthood. He has worked on short films and collaborative creative projects, including directing work alongside his grandfather Ralph Bakshi, further extending the family's multi-generational legacy within animation and film. Miles also has a younger sister, Nina, who had a small voice role within The Boss Baby as well, reflecting just how deeply the entire Bakshi-Shea family has been woven into the fabric of this particular film. Though he maintains a relatively private personal life compared to many of his more famous adult co-stars, Miles Bakshi's contribution to The Boss Baby remains one of the most celebrated pieces of casting in the film, largely because his genuinely childlike performance grounded the movie's more fantastical and comedic elements in real emotional authenticity. Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi, who brings both comic energy and quiet menace to the role of Francis, the CEO of Puppy Company, was born Stephen Vincent Buscemi on December 13, 1957, in Brooklyn, New York. He was raised in a working-class family, the son of a sanitation worker father and a mother who worked as a hostess, and he had 3 brothers. When Buscemi was around 8 years old, his family relocated from Brooklyn to a suburb on Long Island, where he spent much of his childhood. Even as a boy, Buscemi displayed a natural talent for entertaining others, often performing magic tricks and telling jokes for family and friends, though he lacked the confidence in his younger years to seriously consider pursuing acting as a career path. Following his father's encouragement, And very much in keeping with the family's working-class values around stable employment, Buscemi took the New York City Civil Service examination after finishing high school, sitting for the test at the age of 18 in 1976. While waiting for an opening within the fire department of the city of New York, Buscemi worked a series of odd jobs, including positions as a gas station attendant, an ice cream truck driver, and a movie theater usher. During this same period, he began taking acting classes at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, and started performing stand-up comedy on the side, quietly nurturing his artistic ambitions even as he pursued a far more conventional career path. In 1980, Buscemi officially became a firefighter with the FDNY, assigned to Engine Company 55 in the Little Italy neighborhood of Manhattan. For 4 years, he balanced the physically demanding and often dangerous work of firefighting with his continued pursuit of acting and stand-up comedy during his off hours. Buscemi has spoken warmly about his time at Engine 55, describing the deep sense of brotherhood and camaraderie he found among his fellow firefighters, an experience that clearly shaped his character and values for the rest of his life. In 1984, as his acting opportunities began to grow more serious, Buscemi made the difficult decision to leave the fire department behind and commit himself fully to a career in entertainment, a choice that did not come without some tension, as his father had hoped he would remain in civil service long enough to retire with a full pension. Buscemi's acting career gained early traction through independent film projects, including Parting Glances and Jim Jarmusch's Mystery Train, before he achieved a major breakthrough with his unforgettable performance as Mr. Pink in Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs in 1992. This role introduced him to a much wider audience and established him as a favorite among independent filmmakers. He went on to build a long and celebrated collaborative relationship with the Coen brothers, appearing in films such as Miller's Crossing, Fargo, and The Big Lebowski, in which his portrayal of the excitable, ill-fated Donnie remains one of the most beloved supporting performances in modern comedy. Buscemi also became a frequent collaborator with Adam Sandler, appearing in numerous comedies throughout the 1990s and 2000s, while continuing to take on darker, more dramatic television roles, including his acclaimed performance as Tony Blundetto on The Sopranos and later his lead role as Nucky Thompson on the HBO series Boardwalk Empire, for which he received significant industry recognition. Despite his considerable success in Hollywood, Buscemi has never distanced himself from his firefighting roots. In the immediate aftermath of the September 11 terrorist attacks in 2001, Buscemi quietly returned to his old firehouse to volunteer, working long 12-hour shifts alongside his former colleagues as they searched through the rubble of the World Trade Center for survivors and remains. He largely avoided publicity for this effort at the time, preferring not to draw attention to his participation, and it was only through a photograph taken by a bystander that his involvement later became widely known. In the years since, Buscemi has remained a passionate advocate for firefighters, participating in protests against firehouse closures, producing an HBO documentary about the FDNY, and being honored as an honorary battalion chief by the department in recognition of both his original service and his return during the crisis of 9/11. His voice work as the scheming yet strangely charming Francis in The Boss Baby showcases the same blend of comic timing and underlying complexity that has defined his celebrated acting career for decades. Lisa Kudrow. Lisa Kudrow, who voices Janice Templeton, Tim's warm and loving mother in The Boss Baby, was born Lisa Valerie Kudrow on July 30, 1963, in Encino, California. She was raised in an upper-middle-class Jewish family, the daughter of a physician father who specialized in headache research and a mother who worked as a travel agent. Kudrow grew up in the Tarzana neighborhood of Los Angeles, attending local schools before eventually graduating from Taft High School. As a student, she displayed considerable academic talent and was also an accomplished athlete, playing varsity-level tennis throughout both high school and college. Kudrow went on to attend Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, specifically focusing on psychobiology. Her original career ambitions had nothing to do with acting at all. Instead, she intended to follow in her father's footsteps and pursue a career in medical research. After graduating, she returned to Los Angeles and began working alongside her father, contributing to his ongoing research into headache disorders and even studying the relationship between left-handedness and certain types of headaches. For a period of time, it seemed as though Kudrow was firmly on a path toward a scientific career rather than one in entertainment. That trajectory changed thanks to the encouragement of comedian Jon Lovitz, a childhood friend of Kudrow's brother, who recognized her natural comedic sensibility and urged her to try performing. Taking this encouragement seriously, Kudrow began attending improv classes and eventually joined the Groundlings, the renowned Los Angeles improvisational comedy troupe that has served as a launching pad for numerous major comedic talents. She credited her time studying under acclaimed improv teacher Cynthia Sigety as a turning point that fundamentally reshaped her understanding of performance. During this period, she also briefly performed with a short-lived improv troupe alongside future television star Conan O'Brien. Kudrow's early attempts to break into television met with some setbacks, including an unsuccessful audition for Saturday Night Live in 1990. However, she soon found her footing with a recurring role as the ditzy waitress Ursula on the sitcom Mad About You, a character defined by a memorably spacey, scattered energy. This role would later prove to be a fortunate stepping stone, as producers casting for a new ensemble sitcom saw potential in Kudrow and invited her to audition for what would become her career-defining role. In 1994, Kudrow was cast as Phoebe Buffy in Friends, a character who would go on to become one of the most beloved figures in television comedy history. Her portrayal of the eccentric, endearing, and often unpredictable folk-singing masseuse earned her enormous popularity, along with an Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series and numerous other accolades throughout the show's decade-long run from 1994 to 2004. Following the conclusion of Friends, Kudrow made a deliberate effort to avoid being permanently defined by the role of Phoebe, pursuing a range of more unconventional and creatively ambitious projects. She co-created and starred in the HBO mockumentary series The Comeback, playing a washed-up sitcom actress named Valerie Cherish attempting to resurrect her career, a role that showcased a far more uncomfortable and vulnerable side of her comedic range and earned her further award nominations. She also developed and starred in the web series-turned-television show Web Therapy, playing a self-absorbed and unqualified therapist, further demonstrating her willingness to take creative risks while outside the bounds of her most famous role. Kudrow has continued to work steadily across film and television in the years since, appearing in productions ranging from comedic ensemble films to more dramatic and prestige-oriented television projects. On a personal level, Kudrow married French advertising executive Michel Stern in 1995, and the couple has one son together, born in 1998. Interestingly, her real-life pregnancy was written directly into the storyline of Friends, with her character Phoebe serving as a surrogate mother carrying triplets for her brother and his wife. In The Boss Baby, Kudrow's warm and gentle vocal performance as Janice Templeton brought a grounded, believable maternal presence to the film, providing an emotional anchor amid the movie's more fantastical corporate espionage storyline. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, who voices Ted Templeton Sr., the affectionate and unsuspecting father in The Boss Baby, was born James Christian Kimmel on November 13, 1967, in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up as the eldest of 3 children in a devoutly Catholic Italian-American family, with a father who worked as an executive at IBM and a mother of Italian descent whose family had immigrated to the United States generations earlier. As a child, Kimmel served as an altar boy, an experience he has often referenced as having shaped the mischievous, irreverent sense of humor that would later define his career. When Kimmel was around 9 years old, his family relocated from Brooklyn to Las Vegas, Nevada, where he spent the remainder of his childhood and adolescence. From a young age, Kimmel was deeply influenced by late-night television, particularly by comedian and talk show host David Letterman, whom he idolized throughout his teenage years. Inspired by Letterman's own beginnings in radio broadcasting, Kimmel began working in radio while still in high school, hosting a Sunday night interview program on a local college radio station. He briefly attended the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, before transferring to Arizona State University, though he never completed a traditional college degree path, choosing instead to pursue opportunities in radio broadcasting. During this period, he became a well-known caller and later a co-host on various radio programs across several cities, including stints in Seattle, Tampa, and Palm Springs, before eventually finding his way to Los Angeles, where he worked for several years as a sports commentator on a popular morning radio show. Kimmel's transition into television began in 1997, when he was cast as the comedic co-host of the game show Win Ben Stein's Money on Comedy Central, a pairing that combined Kimmel's brash, comedic energy with actor and commentator Ben Stein's more reserved, deadpan persona. The show proved successful, earning the pair an Emmy Award for Outstanding Game Show Hosting. Building on this success, Kimmel went on to co-create and co-host The Man Show alongside fellow comedian Adam Carolla, a raucous, irreverent program aimed at young male audiences that became a defining piece of early 2000s comedy television, despite drawing criticism for its often crude humor. In January 2003, Kimmel left The Man Show behind to launch his own late-night talk program, Jimmy Kimmel Live, on ABC, realizing a long-held ambition inspired by his childhood admiration for David Letterman. The show debuted with a studio located at the historic Pantages Theater on Hollywood Boulevard and gradually built a reputation for its blend of celebrity interviews, comedic sketches, and an easygoing, prank-loving hosting style. Over the following decades, Jimmy Kimmel Live grew into the longest-running late-night program in ABC's history, and Kimmel himself became recognized as one of the most enduring hosts in the history of American late-night television. Beyond his nightly hosting duties, Kimmel has frequently served as the host of major award ceremonies, including multiple telecasts of both the Primetime Emmy Awards and the Academy Awards, further cementing his status as one of the entertainment industry's most trusted and versatile hosts. In addition to his hosting career, Kimmel has voiced characters in animated projects and made numerous appearances in film and television as himself, with his role as Ted Templeton Sr. in The Boss Baby standing as one of his more prominent forays into feature animation voice work. On a personal note, Kimmel was previously married to Gina Maddie, with whom he has 2 children, before later marrying Molly McNinney, a longtime writer and producer on his talk show, with whom he shares 2 additional children. Throughout his career, Kimmel has remained closely connected to his family, frequently incorporating relatives, including his uncle and cousin, into recurring segments on his program, reflecting the same warm, family-oriented sensibility that colors his voice performance as a loving, if occasionally oblivious, television father in The Boss Baby. Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire, who provides the reflective adult narration of Tim Templeton throughout The Boss Baby, was born Tobias Vincent Maguire on June 27, 1975, in Santa Monica, California. His parents, Vincent Maguire and Wendy Brown, were both quite young and unmarried at the time of his birth, and the couple separated when Toby was only about 2 years old. As a result of this early separation and the family's financial difficulties, Maguire experienced a somewhat unstable and transient childhood, frequently moving between various relatives and living situations throughout his early years, an experience he has since described as genuinely challenging. Maguire's introduction to acting came about almost by accident. When he was in the 6th grade, his mother, recognizing a spark of potential interest, offered him $100 to take a drama class instead of a home economics course, a small but pivotal decision that ultimately redirected the course of his entire life. He began appearing in television commercials as a young child, including modeling work, and gradually transitioned into small television and film roles throughout his early teenage years. His commitment to acting eventually led him to leave traditional high school before graduating, though he later completed his education by earning a General Educational Development Certificate. During this same period, while auditioning for various television roles, Maguire crossed paths with fellow young actor Leonardo DiCaprio, and the two formed a close friendship that has endured throughout their adult lives and careers. Maguire's early acting years were not without personal struggle. In the mid-1990s, he battled issues with alcohol that grew serious enough to force him to withdraw from a leading film role he had already been cast in. Recognizing the severity of the problem, Maguire sought help and became sober at the age of 19, a commitment to sobriety he has maintained ever since. Following this period of personal growth, Maguire returned to acting with renewed focus, appearing in the Oscar-nominated short film Duke of Groove before landing meaningful supporting roles in acclaimed films such as Woody Allen's Deconstructing Harry and On Lee's The Ice Storm, the latter of which earned him significant critical praise for his portrayal of a sensitive, introspective teenager. Throughout the late 1990s, Maguire became closely associated with thoughtful, emotionally nuanced coming-of-age roles, appearing in films such as Pleasantville, The Cider House Rules, and Wonder Boys, each of which showcased his talent for portraying quietly complex young characters navigating difficult personal circumstances. This string of critically respected performances set the stage for the role that would transform him into a global movie star. In 2002, Maguire was cast as Peter Parker in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, a film that became an enormous commercial and critical success, breaking box office records upon its release and establishing Maguire as one of Hollywood's most bankable leading men. He went on to reprise the role in two sequels, Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, released in 2004 and 2007 respectively, and would later make a widely celebrated return to the character many years afterward in a subsequent multiverse-spanning Spider-Man film. Beyond his defining superhero role, Maguire continued to build a diverse and respected filmography, starring in Seabiscuit, a film about the legendary racehorse that earned strong reviews and box office success, as well as Brothers, a war drama for which he received a Golden Globe nomination for his portrayal of a soldier struggling with the psychological aftermath of combat. He also took on a prominent supporting role in Baz Luhrmann's lavish adaptation of The Great Gatsby, playing the novel's narrator, Nick Carraway. Beyond acting, Maguire has expanded into film production, founding his own production company, Material Pictures, in 2012 and producing several notable films in the years since. In The Boss Baby, Maguire's understated, warmly nostalgic narration as the adult version of Tim provides the emotional framing device that ties the entire fantastical story together, lending the film's wildest imaginative sequences a genuine and grounded sense of heartfelt reflection. The Boss Baby, 2017, behind the scenes, budget, and funny moments from production. Introduction to the making of an unlikely animated hit. When The Boss Baby arrived in theaters in the spring of 2017, few people outside of DreamWorks Animation fully understood just how long and unusual a journey the film had taken to reach the screen. What began as a slim, 30-page picture book by author and illustrator Marla Frazee was gradually transformed, over the course of several years, into a full-scale animated spy comedy featuring an all-star voice cast, an elaborate corporate fantasy world, and a production budget that placed it firmly among the most expensive animated films of its era. Behind the finished product lies a fascinating story of directorial passion, last-minute casting changes, technical innovation, and no shortage of genuinely funny moments that unfolded both in the recording booth and throughout the animation studio. This deep dive into the making of The Boss Baby explores everything from its considerable financial scale to the lighter, more humorous side of its production, offering fans of review and facts a complete picture of how this unlikely corporate baby adventure came together. A personal project for director Tom McGrath. At the heart of the Boss Baby's creative direction was Tom McGrath, a director already well established within the DreamWorks family thanks to his work on the Madagascar franchise and Megamind. What made this particular project stand out from McGrath's earlier work, however, was just how personal the material felt to him. McGrath has spoken openly about how deeply he connected with the source material because he himself grew up with an older brother, and reading Frazie's original picture book stirred up memories of his own childhood experiences with sibling rivalry. In interviews conducted around the film's release, McGrath revealed that his central creative goal throughout the entire production was to eventually sit down and watch the finished film alongside his own brother, hoping it would resonate with him on a deeply personal level. According to McGrath, when that moment finally arrived, the film succeeded far beyond his expectations, moving his brother to tears during the screening, a reaction that validated years of creative work and emotional investment in getting the sibling dynamic just right. This personal connection shaped much of the film's tone and thematic direction from the very beginning of development. Rather than treating the story purely as a wacky, high-concept comedy about spy babies and corporate rivalries, McGrath and his collaborators worked hard to ensure that the emotional core, the evolving relationship between Tim and his baby brother, remained grounded and believable throughout even the film's most fantastical sequences. Producer Ramsey and Nato worked closely alongside McGrath throughout development, helping translate Frazie's simple but evocative metaphor, the idea that every new baby essentially becomes the boss of the household, into a fully realized feature-length narrative complete with corporate boardrooms, espionage missions, and a sprawling fantasy universe hidden behind ordinary family life. The long road from book to screen. Adapting The Boss Baby for the screen required an enormous amount of creative expansion, since Frazie's original picture book offered only the loosest possible framework for a feature film. Screenwriter Michael McCullers was brought on to develop the story into a full script, tasked with inventing almost the entirety of the film's plot, characters, and world building from scratch, using only the book's central visual joke, a baby dressed in a business suit, as a starting point. This process took considerable time, and the film's journey through development was anything but quick or straightforward. The Boss Baby was originally slated for an earlier release date before ultimately being pushed back by roughly a year, shifting from an initially planned 2016 release to its eventual March 2017 debut, a delay that gave the creative team additional time to refine the script, the animation, and the overall pacing of the story. Throughout this extended development period, the film underwent significant changes to both its plot mechanics and its tone, gradually evolving from a more straightforward family comedy into the elaborate spy thriller meets corporate satire hybrid that eventually reached audiences. Early conceptual artwork and pitch materials reportedly lean even further into the world of corporate culture, drawing comparisons from industry journalists to workplace dramas, with some early coverage of the project even likening its tone to an animated, family-friendly take on a classic corporate drama. Given its emphasis on boardroom politics and cutthroat business rivalries reimagined through the eyes of infants. The casting shake-up, from Kevin Spacey to Steve Buscemi. One of the most significant behind-the-scenes changes during the film's production involved the villainous role of Francis, the puppy-obsessed CEO of Puppy Company. When the film's cast was first announced in September of 2014, alongside Alec Baldwin in the title role, actor Kevin Spacey was originally attached to voice Francis. However, by the time further casting news was announced in the summer of 2016, Spacey had been quietly replaced in the role by Steve Buscemi. While the specific internal reasoning behind this particular casting change was never extensively detailed publicly at the time, it represented one of several notable shifts the production underwent as the film moved closer to completion, and it ultimately proved to be a fortunate change, since Buscemi's distinctive blend of oily charm and simmering menace turned out to be an excellent fit for the character's slippery, salesman-like personality. Alongside this change, the rest of the voice cast came together throughout 2016, with Jimmy Kimmel, Lisa Kudrow, and other performers joining the ensemble in the months leading up to release. Interestingly, Alec Baldwin's casting as the title character was something director Tom McGrath has described as an almost obvious choice from very early on in development. McGrath had previously collaborated with Baldwin on Madagascar, Escape to Africa, where Baldwin voiced the character Makunga, as well as on Rise of the Guardians, where he voiced Santa Claus. Given this existing creative relationship, and given Baldwin's naturally deep, richly textured voice, which McGrath has memorably compared to the sound of an aged cello, the director felt confident that Baldwin could deliver exactly the right blend of comedic bravado and underlying warmth that the Boss Baby character required. McGrath has also noted that Baldwin's real-life experience growing up with 3 younger brothers gave him a genuine, lived-in understanding of sibling dynamics that helped inform his vocal performance throughout the recording process. Funny moments in the recording booth. Voice acting for animated films is often assumed by audiences to be a relatively simple process, but the reality of recording sessions for a project as elaborate as The Boss Baby involved considerable challenges, many of which produced genuinely amusing moments behind the scenes. One of the most widely discussed aspects of the film's voice production involved Alec Baldwin's process for getting back into character across recording sessions that were often spread out over many months, sometimes with significant gaps in between. Baldwin has spoken candidly in interviews about how mentally demanding it can be for a voice actor to consistently rediscover the specific attitude, rhythm, and comedic energy of a character like Boss Baby after long stretches of time away from the role, especially since, unlike live-action filming, animated voice work often lacks the immersive continuity of being physically in costume or on a set. Baldwin approached this challenge with the same seriousness he might bring to a dramatic stage role, treating even a comedic, briefcase-carrying infant executive as a character worthy of genuine craft and exploration, which occasionally led to him needing several takes at the start of each new session simply to rediscover Boss Baby's particular vocal cadence and comedic timing. Perhaps the most delightful behind-the-scenes story from the entire production involves young Miles Bakshi, who was cast as the voice of 7-year-old Tim. As previously covered in our earlier deep dive into the cast's life histories, Bakshi was initially only asked to provide a temporary reference voice for the character during early development, since his mother's position as a DreamWorks producer meant he was frequently around the studio and available for quick recording sessions. What makes this particularly amusing in hindsight is that Bakshi's temporary placeholder performance proved so charming and naturally authentic that it single-handedly beat out dozens of professionally auditioned child actors, with McGrath explaining that trained young performers often sound too polished or articulate for a character meant to embody genuine childlike wonder. Because the film's lengthy production schedule stretched across several years, Bakshi began voicing Tim at around 10 years of age and was 14 by the time the film was finally released, meaning that animators and sound engineers had to creatively manage the natural changes in his voice as he grew older during the recording process. A situation that reportedly led to some good-natured teasing on set about Tim's voice occasionally sounding noticeably different from scene to scene during earlier rough cuts of the film. The recording sessions themselves also produced plenty of comedic energy simply due to the nature of the material. Actors voicing the various infant characters populating Baby Corp were frequently asked to deliver seriously formal, business jargon-heavy dialogue in the exaggerated, gravelly voices of corporate executives, an inherently absurd juxtaposition that reportedly led to frequent bursts of laughter and numerous blown takes during recording, as performers struggled to maintain a straight face while delivering lines about quarterly love metrics and executive baby strategy sessions in tiny, squeaky infant voices layered over deep adult tones. Steve Buscemi, known for his sharp comedic timing from decades of film work, brought a similarly playful energy to his sessions as Francis, leaning into the character's over-the-top theatrical flair during his puppy unveiling presentations, moments that animators later built upon visually to maximize the characters' exaggerated, salesman-like showmanship on screen. The Wizzy alarm clock and other scene-stealing characters. Among the film's most memorable and unexpectedly funny characters is Wizzy, Tim's talking alarm clock, whose deep, wise, almost mystical vocal delivery was specifically designed to evoke the tone of a certain iconic wizard character from a famous fantasy franchise. Director Tom McGrath has openly acknowledged this playful homage, noting with clear amusement how effective the joke landed with both children and adult audiences who immediately recognized the vocal reference. This kind of layered humor, jokes aimed squarely at parents in the audience while still working on a surface level for younger viewers, became something of a signature element throughout the film's comedic approach, and the Wizzy character in particular became a favorite among the animation team specifically because of how much comedic mileage they were able to extract from a relatively minor supporting character. Similarly, the baby triplets who serve as Boss Baby's bumbling field team within the Templeton household became a significant source of comedic material during both the writing and animation phases of production. McGrath has explained that part of the humor surrounding these characters stemmed from the inherent absurdity of imagining literal infants attempting to function as competent field agents, unable to read, write, or perform basic tasks, yet still expected by Boss Baby to carry out complex covert operations. Animators reportedly had a great deal of fun exaggerating the physical comedy surrounding these characters, including their clumsy attempts at teamwork and their tendency to become distracted by ordinary baby behaviors, such as crawling toward shiny objects, in the middle of supposedly serious spy missions. Understanding the film's substantial production budget. From a financial standpoint, The Boss Baby represented a considerable investment on the part of DreamWorks Animation and its distribution partner, 20th Century Fox. The film carried a reported production budget of approximately $125 million, placing it firmly within the higher end of animated feature budgets for its particular era, comparable to other high-profile tentpole animated releases of the mid-2010s. This substantial budget reflected the technical demands of the film's ambitious visual style, which required animators to convincingly render two very different worlds within the same movie: the cozy, naturalistic suburban environment of the Templeton household and the sleek, exaggerated corporate aesthetic of Baby Corp headquarters, each requiring distinct lighting approaches, character animation styles, and environmental detail. A significant portion of any major animated film's budget typically goes toward the multi-year production pipeline required to bring computer animation to life, encompassing everything from initial storyboarding and character design through rigging, detailed animation work, lighting, rendering, and final compositing. Given the film's relatively long development timeline, which stretched across several years from its earliest casting announcements in 2014 through its eventual 2017 release, the animation team had considerable time to refine character models and visual effects. Though this extended schedule also meant sustained costs across the production's various departments over a longer period than some comparable projects. Voice talent costs also represented a meaningful portion of the overall budget, particularly given the film's roster of well-known Hollywood names. Casting recognizable stars like Alec Baldwin, Steve Buscemi, Jimmy Kimmel, Lisa Kudrow, and Tobey Maguire reflects an increasingly common industry practice in modern animated filmmaking, where recognizable celebrity voices are used both to elevate a film's comedic and dramatic performances and to boost its overall marketing appeal. Since major stars naturally draw additional media attention and press coverage during the film's promotional rollout. Beyond voice talent, the film's score, composed by the legendary Hans Zimmer alongside longtime collaborator Steve Mazzaro, represented yet another significant production expense, continuing Zimmer's long and celebrated partnership with DreamWorks Animation that stretched back to earlier films such as The Prince of Egypt and the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. Musical choices and sound design. Beyond Zimmer and Mazzaro's original orchestral score, the filmmakers made several notable musical choices that added additional texture and emotional resonance throughout the film. Perhaps most memorably, the classic Beatles song Blackbird plays a meaningful thematic role at several key points throughout the story, its gentle, melancholic melody underscoring some of the film's more emotionally resonant sequences between Tim and Boss Baby. During the end credits, a fresh vocal cover of the classic song What the World Needs Now Is Love, originally made famous by singer Jackie DeShannon, was recorded specifically for the film, offering a warm, optimistic closing note that reinforced the movie's underlying message about love, family, and acceptance. This attention to musical detail reflects the broader care that went into the film's sound design overall, as the production team worked to build an entirely original sonic identity for the exaggerated corporate world of Baby Corp, layering exaggerated office sounds, elevator chimes, and boardroom ambience underneath the more traditional whimsical scoring associated with family animation. Animation style and visual innovation. Visually, director Tom McGrath and his animation team worked to give the Boss Baby a distinct look that would set it apart from other contemporary animated releases. In interviews conducted around the film's release, McGrath discussed drawing inspiration from a range of classic visual references while developing the film's overall aesthetic, aiming to create character designs and environments that felt fresh within the broader DreamWorks Animation catalog. The character design for Boss Baby himself, in particular, required careful calibration, since animators needed to strike a very specific visual balance between believable infant proportions, such as his oversized head and chubby limbs, and the sharp, tailored business attire that reinforced his corporate executive persona. This deliberate visual contrast between innocent infant physicality and stern adult styling became one of the film's most instantly recognizable and frequently referenced visual jokes throughout its marketing campaign and merchandising. The Baby Corp facility itself required extensive conceptual design work, as animators needed to convincingly scale ordinary corporate office elements, elevators, briefing rooms, executive suites, down to a scale appropriate for an entire workforce composed of infants, while still maintaining a polished, professional visual language that would read clearly as satire to older audience members. This required animators to carefully consider how ordinary office furniture, equipment, and signage might be humorously reimagined at a nursery-appropriate scale, a design challenge that reportedly generated considerable creative back and forth within the art department as the team worked to strike the right comedic balance without the visual gags becoming too repetitive or distracting from the story. Premiere, release strategy, and box office performance. After completing its lengthy production process, The Boss Baby held its official premiere at the Miami International Film Festival in March of 2017, a somewhat unconventional choice of venue for a major studio animated release, before opening wide across the United States on March 31st of that year through distributor 20th Century Fox. The film's theatrical release proved to be a considerable commercial success, ultimately grossing approximately $528 million worldwide against its $125 million production budget, representing a strong return on investment that significantly exceeded many industry expectations, particularly given the film's initially mixed critical reception. This robust box office performance placed The Boss Baby among the top animated releases of 2017, ranking as one of the highest-grossing animated films of that particular year, and solidifying its commercial viability as a franchise property for DreamWorks Animation moving forward. The film's financial success ultimately paved the way for significant franchise expansion in the years that followed. In May of 2017, shortly after the original film's theatrical debut, Universal Pictures and DreamWorks Animation officially announced plans for a sequel, with Tom McGrath confirmed to return as director and Alec Baldwin set to reprise his title role. This sequel, eventually titled The Boss Baby: Family Business, would go on to face its own significant production challenges, including pandemic-related delays that pushed its release date back multiple times before it finally arrived in theaters and on the Peacock streaming platform simultaneously in 2021. Beyond the feature film sequel, The franchise further expanded into television with the Netflix animated series The Boss Baby, Back in Business, announced in December of 2017, which continued exploring the world of Baby Corp through episodic storytelling aimed at younger audiences, though with a different voice cast taking over several key roles. Critical reception and industry recognition. While The Boss Baby's box office performance was undeniably strong, the film's critical reception upon release was notably more mixed. Reviewers generally praised the quality of the animation itself, along with the strength of the voice performances, particularly singling out Alec Baldwin's comedic delivery as one of the film's clear highlights. However, many critics expressed reservations about the film's increasingly complicated plot mechanics as the story progressed, along with some concerns about pacing and the overall balance between its more juvenile comedic elements and its more sophisticated corporate satire aimed at adult viewers. Despite this somewhat divided critical response, the film still managed to earn significant industry recognition during awards season, receiving a nomination for Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards, alongside additional nominations at both the Annie Awards and the Golden Globe Awards, ultimately losing in each of these categories to Pixar's critically acclaimed film Coco, which dominated that particular awards season for animated features. Legacy and lasting impact of the production. Looking back at the full scope of The Boss Baby's production, from its origins as a slim picture book through its transformation into a globally successful animated franchise, the film stands as a compelling example of how personal creative vision, substantial financial investment, and genuine on-set camaraderie can combine to produce a lasting piece of family entertainment. Director Tom McGrath's deeply personal connection to the material, rooted in his own childhood experiences with sibling rivalry, gave the project an emotional authenticity that helped ground its more outlandish comedic elements. Meanwhile, the various behind-the-scenes stories from the production, from Alec Baldwin's dedicated approach to re-inhabiting his character across scattered recording sessions to young Miles Bakshi's unexpected rise from temporary placeholder voice to permanent leading performer, reflect the genuine creative energy and good humor that characterized much of the film's development process. The considerable financial success of The Boss Baby, built upon its substantial $125 million production budget, ultimately validated DreamWorks Animation's confidence in the project and secured its place as a viable, ongoing franchise property within the studio's broader catalog. From its humble origins as a simple metaphor about the arrival of a new sibling, through years of script development, voice casting adjustments, and painstaking animation work, The Boss Baby ultimately emerged as one of the more surprising commercial success stories in recent animated filmmaking history, a testament to the combined efforts of its talented cast, dedicated animation team, and creatively invested director. The Boss Baby, 2017, Cultural and Historical Analysis. Introduction: more than just a business-suited infant. On the surface, The Boss Baby might appear to be little more than a light-hearted, visually gimmicky family comedy built around a single absurd image, an infant in a business suit barking corporate orders at a bewildered family. Yet beneath this seemingly simple premise lies a surprisingly rich web of cultural references, historical context, and social commentary that helps explain why the film resonated so strongly with audiences around the world and why it has continued to leave a lasting imprint on internet culture years after its theatrical release. From its origins as a small, deeply personal picture book to its eventual transformation into a globally successful animated franchise complete with its own peculiar afterlife as an internet meme, The Boss Baby offers a genuinely fascinating case study in how a simple visual joke about the demands of new parenthood can be expanded into a multi-layered piece of commercial entertainment that speaks to broader anxieties about corporate culture, sibling relationships, and shifting family dynamics. In the modern era, this deep dive for review and facts explores the cultural and historical dimensions of The Boss Baby, tracing its journey from a spontaneous doodle on a telephone call to a defining piece of mid-2010s animated cinema and unexpected internet folklore. The literary origins, a doodle born from everyday frustration. To fully understand the cultural roots of the Boss Baby, it helps to look back at how the original source material came into existence. The character of Boss Baby was born not from a carefully planned creative pitch, but from a spontaneous, almost accidental moment of inspiration. Author and illustrator Marla Frazee has explained that the very first sketch of the character emerged while she was on the phone with a friend who was venting about a difficult boss at work. As she listened to her friend's complaints about demanding, entitled workplace behavior, Frazee found herself doodling a tiny infant dressed in a formal business suit, an image that struck her as both empathetic and inherently comedic, capturing something universally recognizable about overbearing authority figures while filtering it through the innocent, helpless form of a baby. She found the sketch amusing enough to pin up in her studio, though it would take considerable time before this simple visual joke evolved into a fully realized narrative concept suitable for a children's book. Interestingly, Frazee has also revealed that a second, seemingly unrelated life experience played an important role in shaping the eventual story. When her youngest son was a teenager, he requested a kitten for Christmas, and the family adopted their first cat despite having no prior experience with pets. The kitten's chaotic, disruptive presence in the household, marked by constant messes and demands for attention, quickly overwhelmed the family, leading her son to apologize for having wanted the kitten in the first place, since it was clearly stressing out the entire household. Frazee has described recognizing something deeply familiar in her son's reaction, noting that the disruption and adjustment caused by the new kitten closely mirrored the exact feelings she remembered experiencing when bringing home a newborn baby years earlier. This connection between the chaos of a new pet and the chaos of a new sibling would later become strikingly relevant to the eventual feature film adaptation, which builds its entire central conflict around a symbolic rivalry between babies and puppies competing for parental love and attention. A plot device that echoes almost precisely the emotional parallel Frazee originally drew between her son's kitten and her own experience of early parenthood. The resulting picture book, published in 2010 through Beach Lane Books, told a comparatively simple and contained story compared to the eventual film. In just 32 pages, Frazee depicted a newborn who arrives at his family's home dressed in a business suit onesie, complete with a briefcase, immediately assuming command of the household and treating his exhausted parents as overworked employees expected to fulfill his every demand around the clock. The book functioned as an extended metaphor rather than a literal narrative, using the exaggerated image of corporate authority to humorously capture the very real feeling many new parents experience of suddenly losing control over their own lives and schedules once a baby arrives. Frazee has described the writing and illustration process as unexpectedly difficult, noting that the initial concept felt funny in theory but repeatedly failed to translate successfully onto the page during early drafts, requiring extensive revision before she and her editor felt the finished book truly captured the humor she had originally envisioned. Despite these early struggles, the finished book was warmly received upon publication, earning multiple starred reviews from major literary trade publications and eventually selling more than 200,000 copies, cementing its status as a beloved staple of baby shower gift-giving and new parent humor within children's literature circles. From small metaphor to sprawling corporate fantasy, the cultural work of adaptation. The process of transforming Frazee's slim, metaphorical picture book into a 97-minute feature film required an enormous act of creative expansion, and understanding this transformation offers valuable insight into broader trends within family entertainment during the 2010s. Rather than simply adapting the book's existing story beat for beat, screenwriter Michael McCullers and director Tom McGrath essentially used Frazee's central visual metaphor as a launching point for an entirely new narrative built around genre conventions borrowed from spy thrillers and corporate espionage films. This creative choice reflects a broader trend that became increasingly common in American family animation throughout the 2000s and 2010s, in which simple, evocative premises drawn from children's literature or greeting card-style concepts were expanded into elaborate franchise-ready cinematic universes complete with their own internal mythologies, corporate hierarchies, and sequel-friendly world building. This approach to adaptation carries significant cultural implications worth examining. By inventing the concept of Baby Corp, a secretive global organization responsible for managing the production and emotional allocation of babies worldwide, the filmmakers effectively took Frazie's gentle, intimate metaphor about new parenthood and reframed it through the lens of corporate bureaucracy and institutional conspiracy. Genre elements far more commonly associated with adult entertainment than traditional children's literature. This blending of childlike whimsy with distinctly adult institutional satire reflects a broader creative strategy that many family entertainment studios adopted during this era, crafting films designed to operate simultaneously on multiple levels, offering straightforward slapstick comedy and colorful visual spectacle for younger viewers while embedding sharper, more knowing satirical commentary aimed at accompanying parents and older audience members who might recognize the exaggerated corporate jargon, boardroom politics, and executive posturing as pointed commentary on real-world workplace culture. The spy genre and its long history in family entertainment. Another important cultural thread running through The Boss Baby involves its deliberate use of spy thriller and espionage genre conventions, a storytelling tradition with a long and interesting history within family-oriented entertainment. Long before The Boss Baby reimagined infants as covert corporate agents, family films and television programs had repeatedly borrowed the structural conventions of adult espionage fiction, secret organizations, covert missions, double agents, and dramatic reveals, and repurposed them for younger audiences, often using the inherent silliness of placing children or animals into serious spy roles as a reliable comedic device. This tradition stretches back through decades of family entertainment and reflects a recurring cultural fascination with imagining ordinary, seemingly powerless figures, whether children, animals, or in this case infants, as secretly possessing extraordinary hidden capabilities and responsibilities. By framing Boss Baby as a top-level corporate executive operating undercover within an unsuspecting suburban household, the film taps into this well-established genre tradition, while adding its own distinctive twist, grounding the espionage plot within the emotionally resonant, deeply personal context of sibling rivalry and family bonding. This combination allows the film to deliver the fast-paced action beats, dramatic confrontations, and clever tactical maneuvering associated with traditional spy narratives while ultimately subordinating these genre elements to a more universal, emotionally grounded story about two brothers learning to accept and love one another. This blending of genre spectacle with intimate family drama reflects a storytelling approach that has proven consistently successful across American animated filmmaking, allowing studios to market their films as exciting, visually dynamic entertainment, while still delivering the emotionally satisfying, values-affirming narratives that parents and audiences have come to expect from major family releases. Corporate satire and the cultural moment of 2017. Beyond its genre influences, The Boss Baby also arrived at a particularly interesting cultural moment for corporate satire within mainstream entertainment. Released in March of 2017, the film emerged during a period when American popular culture was increasingly engaging with questions about corporate power, executive behavior, and workplace dynamics, themes that had already found significant traction in adult-oriented television comedy throughout the preceding decade. Alec Baldwin's casting in the title role carries particular cultural resonance in this context, given that Baldwin had already spent years playing the character of Jack Donaghy, an arrogant, comically self-important network television executive, on the acclaimed sitcom 30 Rock. A performance that had earned him multiple Emmy Awards and established him as one of popular culture's most recognizable comedic embodiments of exaggerated corporate authority. Audiences bringing this prior association to The Boss Baby would likely have recognized immediate echoes of Baldwin's earlier comedic persona in his vocal performance as Boss Baby, creating a layer of intertextual humor that rewarded viewers familiar with his broader body of work. This satirical engagement with corporate culture also reflects broader anxieties that had become increasingly prominent in American popular discourse throughout the 2010s regarding workplace hierarchies, executive compensation, corporate messaging, and the often absurd, jargon-heavy language of modern business culture. By placing this exaggerated corporate language and behavior into the mouths of literal infants, the film created a comedic device that allowed audiences to laugh at recognizable workplace absurdities from a safe, gentle emotional distance, since the inherent innocence of the infant characters softened what might otherwise have read as a more pointed or cynical critique of corporate America. This strategy of using childlike or animal characters to deliver satirical commentary on adult institutions without alienating family audiences represents a long-standing and carefully calibrated tradition within American animated filmmaking, one that allows studios to engage with contemporary social and cultural anxieties while still maintaining the broad, inoffensive appeal necessary for a successful family-oriented theatrical release. The symbolic battle between babies and puppies, a reflection of real demographic trends. Perhaps one of the most culturally interesting elements embedded within the Boss Babies premise involves its central conflict between Baby Corp and Puppy Company, companies locked in competition over which category of dependent creature, infants or puppies, will receive the greater share of human affection and attention. While clearly intended as an exaggerated, fantastical plot device designed to generate comedic spy thriller stakes, this particular narrative choice inadvertently touches upon genuinely significant real-world demographic and cultural trends that were becoming increasingly visible around the time of the film's release. Throughout the 2010s, a number of developed nations, including the United States, experienced well-documented declines in birth rates alongside a simultaneous and substantial rise in pet ownership, with dogs in particular increasingly being embraced by many households, including younger couples and single adults, as beloved companions occupying emotional space that earlier generations might have reserved primarily for children. This broader cultural shift, sometimes discussed in media coverage and academic research examining changing attitudes toward family formation, delayed parenthood, and evolving definitions of household companionship, provides an unexpectedly relevant real-world backdrop against which the film's central fantastical conflict can be read. Whether or not the filmmakers consciously intended this connection, the Boss Babies premise of a secretive corporate war being waged over the emotional allocation of human affection between babies and puppies functions as a surprisingly apt, if highly exaggerated, comedic reflection of genuine ongoing conversations within contemporary society regarding shifting priorities around companionship, caregiving, and family structure. This unintentional resonance with real demographic trends likely contributed, at least in part, to the film's broad appeal among adult viewers, who may have recognized within its silly, high-concept premise a distorted but oddly recognizable echo of genuine cultural conversations happening around them regarding pets, parenthood, and shifting generational priorities. DreamWorks Animation's position within the broader animation landscape of the 2010s. Understanding the Boss Baby also requires situating it within the broader historical context of DreamWorks Animation's position within the American animation industry during the mid-2010s. By the time the film entered production, DreamWorks Animation had spent nearly 2 decades competing directly against Pixar and other major animation studios for critical and commercial dominance within the family entertainment market. While Pixar had built a reputation throughout the 2000s and early 2010s for emotionally sophisticated, critically acclaimed original storytelling, DreamWorks Animation had cultivated a somewhat different creative identity, often characterized by faster comedic pacing, more overt pop culture references, and a greater willingness to lean into broad, exaggerated humor alongside emotional sincerity. The Boss Baby, with its blend of slapstick infant comedy, knowing corporate satire, and heartfelt sibling bonding narrative, fits comfortably within this broader DreamWorks creative tradition, representing a continuation of the studio's established approach to balancing accessible, high-energy comedy with genuine emotional stakes. The film's release also coincided with a particularly turbulent period for DreamWorks Animation as a business entity, following the studio's acquisition by NBC Universal in 2016, a significant corporate transition that shifted DreamWorks away from its earlier distribution partnership with 20th Century Fox toward Universal Pictures for future releases. The Boss Baby thus occupies a somewhat transitional position within DreamWorks Animation's broader release history, representing one of the studio's final theatrical productions to be distributed under its earlier Fox partnership before the full transition toward Universal took effect for subsequent releases. This period of corporate restructuring within the animation industry reflects broader consolidation trends that were reshaping the entertainment landscape throughout the mid-2010s, as major media conglomerates increasingly absorbed independent or semi-independent animation studios into larger corporate structures, a business trend that stands in an interesting, almost self-referential relationship to the Boss Baby's own satirical subject matter regarding corporate mergers, executive hierarchies, and institutional consolidation. Award season context and the shadow of Coco. The Boss Baby's journey through the 2017 award season also offers useful historical context for understanding its cultural reception. Despite earning a nomination for Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards, alongside additional nominations at the Annie Awards and Golden Globe Awards, the film ultimately lost in every major category to Pixar's Coco, a film widely celebrated for its deeply researched, culturally respectful exploration of Mexican traditions surrounding the Day of the Dead. This particular award season pairing, a broadly comedic, corporate satire-driven family film going head-to-head against a critically acclaimed work of culturally specific, emotionally profound storytelling, reflects a broader tension that has long existed within the animation industry between more overtly commercial, mass-market family entertainment and more artistically ambitious, culturally significant animated filmmaking. While the Boss Baby's box office performance ultimately far outpaced Coco's initial theatrical run, the contrasting critical reception between the two films highlights an ongoing conversation within animation criticism regarding the relative value placed on commercial accessibility versus artistic ambition. A tension that continues to shape award season narratives within the animated feature category to the present day. The Unexpected Afterlife, Boss Baby as Internet Cultural Phenomenon. Perhaps the most culturally fascinating chapter in the Boss Baby's ongoing legacy involves its transformation, several years after its theatrical release, into an unexpected and enduring piece of Internet meme culture. In September of 2019, a Twitter user posted a joke imagining a hypothetical person whose only cinematic reference point was the Boss Baby, humorously suggesting that such a person would inevitably interpret every subsequent film they watched as bearing strange similarities to that singular movie, regardless of genre or subject matter. This joke, built around the deliberately absurd premise of someone possessing an extremely narrow and specific frame of cultural reference, struck a chord with Internet audiences and quickly evolved into a widely recognized meme format, often referred to as the guy who's only seen the Boss Baby, or simply, Boss Baby vibes. The meme proved remarkably adaptable, with countless Internet users applying its basic structure to satirize a wide range of situations involving limited perspective, echo chambers, and superficial pattern recognition, extending the joke's relevance far beyond its original narrow context of film criticism into broader commentary on politics, media literacy, and online discourse more generally. The success and longevity of this meme format speaks to an interesting broader truth about the Boss Baby's specific cultural position. Because the film achieved such widespread commercial success and remained continuously accessible through streaming platforms, home video releases, and its ongoing franchise expansion into sequels and television series, it became one of those rare pieces of family entertainment that nearly everyone across generational and cultural lines has at least some passing familiarity with, even those who never specifically sought it out as dedicated fans. This near-universal cultural recognition, combined with the film's inherently absurd central visual premise of a briefcase carrying infant executive, made it an ideal vehicle for this particular style of internet humor, which relies fundamentally on shared cultural recognition to land effectively. The meme's continued circulation years after the film's original release demonstrates how animated family films, often dismissed by some cultural commentators as lightweight or disposable entertainment, can nonetheless leave surprisingly durable and unexpected marks on broader internet culture and collective cultural vocabulary. Sibling rivalry as universal cultural narrative. Beyond its more specific corporate satire and genre elements, The Boss Baby also taps into one of the most enduring and universally recognizable themes found throughout human storytelling traditions across cultures and historical periods: the complex emotional dynamics of sibling relationships, and the particular psychological challenge faced by an only child adjusting to the arrival of a new brother or sister. This theme carries deep historical roots within storytelling traditions worldwide, appearing repeatedly throughout folklore, religious texts, and literary traditions across countless cultures, reflecting just how fundamental and universally relatable this particular family experience has remained across vastly different historical periods and cultural contexts. By channeling this deeply familiar emotional territory through the exaggerated, fantastical lens of corporate espionage and spy thriller conventions, The Boss Baby offers a distinctly modern, culturally specific interpretation of an ancient and universally recognized storytelling theme, demonstrating how contemporary family entertainment continues to find fresh, era-appropriate ways of exploring timeless emotional experiences that have resonated with audiences across countless generations and cultural traditions. The film's framing device, presenting the entire fantastical narrative as a nostalgic, possibly embellished memory recounted by an adult narrator looking back on his childhood, further reinforces this connection to universal storytelling traditions surrounding memory, childhood, and the way personal history becomes mythologized and reshaped through the passage of time. This narrative technique, deliberately leaving ambiguous how much of the story reflects literal reality versus childhood imagination, reflects broader cultural and literary traditions concerned with the unreliable, creatively reconstructed nature of childhood memory, a theme that has appeared throughout various forms of literature and film across different cultural and historical contexts, lending The Boss Baby's seemingly simple family comedy an additional layer of thematic sophistication that connects it to much broader and older traditions of storytelling concerned with memory, nostalgia, and the ways adults reconstruct and reinterpret their own childhood experiences. Conclusion: a small doodle's unexpectedly large cultural footprint. Looking back across the full scope of its cultural and historical journey, from a spontaneous phone call doodle sketched by an author venting sympathy for a friend's workplace frustrations, through a modestly successful children's picture book, to an ambitious multi-$100 million animated feature film, and eventually into an enduring, endlessly adaptable internet meme format, The Boss Baby offers a genuinely compelling case study in the unpredictable ways that simple creative ideas can accumulate layers of cultural meaning and relevance over time. Its blending of corporate satire, spy genre conventions, universal sibling rivalry themes, and inadvertent commentary on shifting demographic trends around pets and parenthood reflects the surprising thematic depth that can exist within even the most seemingly straightforward pieces of mainstream family entertainment. Far from being merely a disposable piece of children's comedy, The Boss Baby stands as a genuinely interesting artifact of mid-2010s American popular culture, one whose influence has extended well beyond the theater and into the broader fabric of internet culture and collective cultural vocabulary in the years since its release.